practice something a bit longer. Now, you've done questions like this a lot. It's just the fact that they are more closely linked now to the exam and the exam that you're doing. So this question is for language. So we're going to write language at the top. I mean, it says it for you anyway, but sometimes writing it helps. So we're doing language. And in particular, we are doing language paper 1, question 2. So this will all become clearer once we finish Romeo and Juliet. But it's just to start practicing the things that you have to do for language. Your homework should be revising what you do in class, but also an extension of what you do in class. So a lot of your English homeworks have been designed to help you also revise. Apologies for the shadow. I'm not sure how to get rid of the shadow of the camera. Okay, so a paper 1, question 2 is all about actually just language analysis. And this is actually why we feel quite confident giving you this as a homework, because it's something that you've done actually in year 7, you've done it in year 8, you've done it in year 9 as well. Now, the first thing I always recommend that before you read the extract, of course, you read the question and you identify what you need to do in the question. You highlight those key words in the question. So you have here, how does the writer use language to describe the weather? So here you've got a language question. So they want to know how you use language, and then you want to make sure that you answer the focus of the question, the weather. So one of the things that I always say is that you want to make sure that this noun phrase here, the weather, appears several times in your answer. So what that ensures is that you are answering the focus of the question. If you're using the word the weather several times, it means that you are going to answer the question. The other thing as well that we try to give you in year 10 and 11 is a bit of a structure, but it's more of a tick list. You don't have to follow it religiously, but it's a really good way of starting your answer to make sure that you are putting the examiner in the right frame of mind to give you the marks. So when it comes to a language question, we like to follow TP. I'm going to write what that means. So you've got technique, evidence, purpose, and effect. And if I'm honest, I always say to my classes, if you want to push into that 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of score, you want to actually explore effects times 3. So maybe you want to look at 2 or 3 quotations that you're going to look at the effects of. And I'll show you a tiny bit here what I mean by that. The other thing that you want to do to develop your effects is you want to use magic circles. Okay? Now, magic circles is just a way of helping you develop your exploration of connotations. So in your first circle, you tend to put the word that you want to analyze, and then you try to think of 3 to 4 ideas that word makes you think of. So for example, if I was analyzing the word red from the text or something like that, I would say red creates an image of, then I would say highlights, and then towards symbolizes. Now, you can put any analytical verb. Now, this is not how I write my answer. This is how my brain starts working the response that I want to do. Okay? So, let's have a little look at the extract. I'm going to show you all of this a tiny bit in action. So, how does the writer use language to describe the weather? So, I'm looking for words that describe the weather. A reef of clouds and lightning raced across the sky from the sea. My hands were shaking and my mind wasn't far behind. I looked up and saw the storm spilling like rivers of blackened blood from the clouds, blotting out the moon and covering the roofs of the city in darkness. A clap of thunder roared close by, and I felt the ground shake under my feet. On the flooding pavement, the street lamps blinked, then went out like candles snuffed by the wind. Okay, so there's loads of techniques actually in this one in terms of describing the weather. So first of all, actually, you've got here a wreath of clouds. Okay, so that suggests that we've got loads and loads of clouds, and it's almost associating the clouds with the sea, which as well makes the weather seem overwhelming and vast and huge. Okay, and then you've got lightning raced across the sky. Again, you've got that word raced there, kind of suggests something that gives it speed, gives it power. Maybe it makes it appear a bit uncontrollable. My hands were shaking, my mind wasn't far behind. Now, that's not necessarily about the weather, so I'm not going to highlight anything on there because that's about the character and not the weather itself. I looked up and saw the storm spilling like rivers of blackened blood from the clouds. Now, that's definitely about the weather. So we've got here the storm spilling like rivers of blackened blood from the clouds. Now, that's an awesome one. That's a really good line because it gives me loads of things to analyze. Number one, on here, for example, I've got that simile. Okay, the storm is described like a river, a spilling river of blackened blood from the clouds. But then I've also got this idea of the alliteration of blackened blood. And actually, because it's a B alliteration, baba is plosive alliteration. But also, I could actually analyze the fact that I've got the words, the adjective blackened, and then I've got the noun blood. So I've got that noun there. And that suggests that this storm is quite sinister and scary and overwhelming. Also, I've got that idea of rivers, assuming on the idea of rivers. Again, rivers are associated with nature and they flow and they're ongoing. So I might analyze that. But I also like this verb, spilling. Again, it suggests something that is uncontrollable and unpredictable and ongoing. And then, I know there's loads in that line, it's a fantastic line. And then I've also got that sibilance here with spilling, storm spilling. Again, sibilance. Again, that creates a real sense of something being sinister. So can you see, just that line has got loads of techniques you could analyze. Blotting out the moon and covering the roofs of the city in darkness. Now, there's two words that I like here. I like the use of the word blotting and then covering, because it kind of suggests that this storm, apologies for my dog, that this storm, let me just go and take him off, and overwhelming and all-powerful because it covers everything. Okay, now I don't want to use that, but maybe almost like suffocating, or even controlling. It's taking over everything. And then we've got a clap of thunder roared close by. Now you've got the thunder roaring. Okay, so and actually you've got a clap as well. So you've got onomatopoeia, and then you've also got roared, which you might say is a tiny bit of zoomorphism. Okay, close by, and I felt the ground shake under my feet. Now, even though that's still about his feelings, we've got, and I've got it here by shaking and shaking. Well, you could actually talk about the power of the weather and not only affecting the character, but also affecting the environment around him. So I'm going to highlight shake and shake actually, because it might be something that I would write about. On the flooding pavement, so like you've got that noun phrase there, the flooding pavements, it suggests that there's a lot of rain, like you've got that through the word flooding. The street lamps blink, then went out like candles, snuffed by the wind. So again, there, the word snuff is the way that no light is being allowed by the weather. So suggesting a bit of a sinister kind of dark, over-pressing kind of weather. Now, as you notice, there are loads of techniques there that you could analyze, But because this is an 8-mark question, so I'm going to write here 8 marks. Actually, you only want to maybe write two TP paragraphs, because if you make them really developed, actually that will be enough. Now it's about choosing actually the best quote that you think is going to give you the most ideas. Now personally for me, I would say that the storm spilling like rivers blackened of blackened blood from the clouds is probably one of the best quotes in that answer. And then I use TP to help me form my answer. So the technique that I am analysing. So if you want to pause and just have a go first, okay, and then let's have a little answer go. Okay, so hopefully you've paused. So this is a bit of my planning. If you want to pause after my planning, then you can write your answer. So the technique is, of course, a simile. Okay. Now, I might also talk, though, about the plosive alliteration, which makes, I suppose, the storm sound quite noisy as well as the imagery it creates, and then also like that sinister, that sibilance, which adds to that sinister feel of the storm. Then I've got my evidence. Now I'm just going to put like this because I'm not going to rewrite it. My evidence. Then I've got my purpose. Now, because this simile is the storm spilling like rivers of blackened blood from the clouds, actually this simile is describing the storm. It's not describing the clouds, okay? So if I was using this quote, a reef of clouds, my purpose will be that simile is to describe a reef of clouds, but it's not. So this simile is describing the storm and casting, or overcasting, the city. Are we in a city? I think we were in a city somewhere. The city, yes. The city. Okay? Right? So I need to explain how that simile is being used in the text. This is actually quite important, okay? Because that shows that I'm answering the question. So to describe the storm overcasting the city, and then I want to put, like, answer question, making the weather seem, and then I need to put here my interpretation. Now, because I'm going to talk about this idea of spilling over in a storm, like a river, I'm going to say making the weather seem overwhelming. So I'm going to, that's going to be one of my main ideas. So look at this. In my purpose, I need to answer the question. Okay, and then I put my effects. Now, this is where, for effects, I start maybe zooming in on words. Effects and magic circles are all about zooming in on words. So zoom in on words. Now sometimes you might just decide to zoom in on one word, and that might get you a 4 out of 8. But if you want to go higher, you want to zoom in on a range of words, ideally across the text, or maybe even within your quote. Depends how long your quote is. So for example, the first thing that I might zoom in on is on the use of the noun rivers, and that's when I start using my magic circles. Now, rivers make me think of nature, and when I think of nature, I think of something powerful. And when I think of something, also creates an image of nature, highlighting the storm, the weather is powerful, nature powerful, and if something is powerful, it can't be controlled. And then I might say that actually, so that's my quote number 1, that's my zoom in on the rivers. And I might say that this is emphasized, so I'm going to do magic circles again, by the word spilling. This is my next quote that I'm going to analyze. Now, spilling, again, creates an image of, now I've already put uncontrollable and nature, but I'll say creates an image of something flowing, And because it ends in ing, it suggests that it's ongoing. And therefore unstoppable. And that makes the weather, and I might repeat myself here, but I'm going to keep it, makes the weather overwhelming. Because it can't be stopped. Okay? So within that quote, I've already analysed the words, and that's pretty awesome. But there's also something else that makes the weather quite overwhelming, and it's this idea there's something sinister about the weather, and we have that through the words, through the sibilants in storm spilling. Okay, and if I was going to analyze sibilants, I want to talk about the sound. So I talk about the S sound, which creates something sinister. Sinister image. It actually suggests almost like an anger, like the storm is angry. But then as well, we've got the idea of the storm being quite dark, emphasized actually by the word blackened. So I'm just going to do the adjective blackened. Oh, I can't fit it in there. Blackened. Okay. Now if I did blackened, again, that creates an image of something dark. Now, in particular here, I think it highlights almost like a storm has evil intent and symbolizes maybe the storm as a villain. And I might here, so all of that, now if you wrote about all of that in just one paragraph, you definitely should be on that 5 or 6 out of 8, okay? But if you want to push it to a level 4, so that 7 out of 8 or that 8 out of 8, you might link this idea of a villain to the fact that towards the end of the extract, the weather gets rid of the, snuffed the light. And that kind of symbolizes the way that the weather gives a sense of lack of hope, and it gets rid of any positive feeling. Okay, so by linking the words across, it gives you an even better answer. Okay, so the way that you put this together, so I'm just gonna kind of think about your phrases. You start with saying the writer uses a simile, then you quote that simile. So the writer uses a simile when he writes the storm spilling like rivers of black and blood from the clouds. The writer does this to describe the storm as overcast in the city, making the weather seem overwhelming. Okay, that already is going to get you 1 or 2 marks. And then you zoom in on the words. The use of the noun river creates an image of nature, highlighting how powerful the weather is and symbolizing how it can't be controlled. In addition, the use of the word spilling also creates that image of something that is flowing, emphasizing how the weather is ongoing, therefore symbolizing how it is unstoppable and overwhelming. Furthermore, the use of sibilants creates a sense that the storm is sinister because it makes us think of something that is angry as it hisses. And the adjective blacken creates an image that the weather is dark, maybe symbolizing an evil intent and presenting the storm as a villain, which is further highlighted by the end of the extract when the writer uses the word snuffed, showing that there is a lack of hope. So can you see? All of that will give you a pretty amazing answer, and you just follow this idea of kind of TP. The main thing that you want to be doing in this is where, in this effects bit, This is where you're going to get all of your marks. The more you talk about the writer using a technique and why he's using that technique, the higher your mark will be. Okay, I hope you found that video helpful and that you managed to do some lovely answers.